1. I don't live in the house anymore, but I grew up here most of my life, and there was always something. I think it might be a ghost, but I would like to get other opinions. First, a little bit of the most important places, the downstairs and upstairs floors, which are connected with a normal staircase. The downstairs floor is connected to the basement, kitchen, office, and living room, while the upstairs floor is connected to all the sleeping rooms. To start from my oldest memories of paranormal things to the newest. When I was a small kid, 6 years old, I'm now 20, a huge storm hit us and the whole region got no power due to a tree falling on a power line. It was between 6 and 7 p.m. when the power went out. So my siblings and I grabbed our Nintendos to make some light, while being close to our parents who were searching for candles. They sent me in the office to search for more candles, and I went alone. When I wanted to go back to the kitchen, I thought my brother or sister passed me with their Nintendo and walked back upstairs. It was weird. Instead of the light of the Nintendo, there was just a white square the size of the Nintendo screen. It didn't emit a lot of light, and nothing blocked the light going up the stairs. There were no steps going up the stairs. I asked if someone went up, but everybody said no. When I was a kid, I had a lot of nightmares. One time I woke up from one, and the creature from that dream was standing in the door. I'm sure it wasn't sleep paralysis since I was still able to move and could talk. We always slept with the light in the floor on because when it was off, my brother and I were not feeling safe in the dark. It felt like something was in the dark, though it could just have been us being kids. One time I was alone and went out of my room wanting to go down the stairs to get something to eat. When I opened my door, it was daytime. I saw a human-like shadow going down the stairs. Again, no footsteps, and I was alone in the house. I was scared for a moment and then went on with my day, trying not to think about it. Lastly, this is probably the most significant of all. Again, I was alone, coming home from school when I was 12 or 13. Somewhere between 1 and 2 p.m., I decided to make myself lunch. Went in the basement, got myself some ingredients, and went back into the kitchen. I always close the basement door and put out the light. Always. So I'm standing in the kitchen. I hear the basement door being slammed shut. Like literally slammed shut with full force. It scared the shit out of me. No window was open, so I grabbed the big kitchen knife to see if somebody went in the house without me noticing it. Since our back door, which is close to the kitchen, is always open for friends when someone is home. I found nothing in the basement. No voice, no steps, no one. I always had the feeling that something was in the house with us, but only I can sense it, since nobody else talked about something similar. The thing is mostly on the floor, but I think this has been changing over the last 2 years, though. I moved away for 3 years, from 2017 to 2020, for education. When I came back, my main room became the office, since we placed my PC there. So whatever happened in the house, I would hear or see it, since I've been in the middle of it all. First, it was barely noticeable that something was moving on down the stairs floor when it became night, and everyone else was asleep or upstairs. I just had a feeling of being watched all the time. Just something standing in the floor, staring at me, sitting in the office. It became so severe that I started closing the door and curtain, and having a strong urge not to open the door anymore, to feel safe. Sometimes sitting there, it felt like I was being touched, just very slightly, barely noticeable, or a cold wind blowing past, sometimes staying, forcing me to put on something warm. The strangest thing happened when I took a mini job for 2 weeks, bringing newspaper in the early morning hours. While being on my route, there was one street I had the same feeling as in the house, just way stronger, like ridiculously strong. I even had panic attacks sometimes and asked my mother one night to come with me, just for this one street, though she brushed it off and said I'd have to handle it myself, but when I came home the feeling in the house became less and less with every day, until it was pretty much gone. I tried to concentrate on it, but it never really came back, and when it was there it was so weak that I was ignoring it. A friend of mine came over 3 months ago, and I talked to her about all my experiences with this something. She told me that she also believed it might have been a ghost since it seemed to be gone. However, shortly after she left, the feeling was back, just as strong as before. Last night was a nightmare. I moved away again for more education, and when I came back to my parents to finish my driver's license, I got it today, still happy, there was this presence the whole afternoon and evening. I tried to ignore it and went to sleep, tried to listen to a podcast, but it wasn't working. This something was in my room watching me and moving in it. I was sure sometimes it was behind me and sometimes it was in front of me. My room was as cold as in the middle of winter. And I had panic opening my eyes. And maybe seeing something, though this has never happened. If I ever saw it, I'm sure it was the shadow on the wall, but never again. The other years it was mainly the floor, but since the last 2 years it had been more and more in the room I'm sleeping in. I can't close my door because it's stronger when the door is closed, like I would trap it. Even got my cat upstairs in my room to comfort me, which worked to some degree. And I fall asleep around 2 a.m. I'm normally asleep within a few minutes, but I stayed up just because of that for 3 whole hours. I don't know what to do. I don't know what this is. It has never harmed me. It just feels like it's there. I was never able to communicate or get a picture or video. I tried a few times, and I'm not even sure I want to anymore. It's never really strong when others are around, but it's still there. I also know that whatever it is bound to the house, since I don't have that exact feeling anywhere else. I just want to know if it's me or actually something in here. Never had bad experiences with the house or my family to cause a negative association with it. What is this thing I'm feeling? Also, a quick note about the behavior of my cat, since many believe cats can sense the paranormal. Cat and I have a good relationship, however something is off. Every time he enters my room, I switched rooms when my sister moved out, and same behavior. He is extremely cautious in my room, going inside like it's his first time and exploring everything like he's never seen it. Sometimes he even gets distracted by something while I give him his favorite treats. This isn't the case in any other room. He also likes sleeping close to the stairs, though this might be because we are split up around the house. He can probably still hear everybody else, and I know that he doesn't like being alone in the house. 2. My then boyfriend, now husband, inherited the house, built in 1950, of his grandparents back in 2018, because his grandfather couldn't take the stairs anymore, which forced him to move out. We moved in shortly after, in May 2019. The first few weeks went well. We cleaned the house and made it our home. In summer, things started getting weird. FYI, my boyfriend never believed in ghosts or anything paranormal. I was just hoping that the creepy stories I heard were just stories. But here are a few of my and our encounters. It started out quite small. Random things like the TV, the microwave, or the washing machine started acting out. We didn't think much of it due to the fact that they were quite old already, but they were still working, so we didn't throw them out. Doors started opening or closing on their own without any door or window open, so the wind was not the culprit. One time, a door which never makes any noise when being closed or opened started opening with the loudest and most chilling screech I've ever heard. I closed and opened it to test it out, and it didn't make a sound. One night, my boyfriend and I were in bed. It was around 10 p.m. We were both awake, talking about some stuff, when suddenly a loud noise came from across the hallway. It sounded like the big metal ladder we kept in that room the noise came from had fallen over. We got up to check, but everything was normal. Nothing shattered, the ladder was standing perfectly straight, leaning against the wall. One night I was home alone watching TV because my boyfriend had to work late. It was around 9:45 p.m. Next to the TV was a glass door. Something kept me looking at that door, and every time my eyes landed on the door, I noticed a piece of white fabric in the left corner, as if someone in a long white flowy gown ran past the door. This happened multiple times during that night. I told my boyfriend, and he opened the glass door to take a look. As soon as he stepped near the door, I started freezing like it was winter. But it was summer, and it was really hot outside. We couldn't find anything that explained what I saw. One time, my boyfriend and I were getting ready for bed. He was already in our bedroom, but I was still brushing my teeth. It was almost midnight when I heard a little girl 4 or 5 years old tell a story. I thought that my boyfriend was watching a video, so I brushed it off. When I came into the bedroom, I asked him what he was watching. He looked at me, confused, and said he wasn't watching a video at all, and that he thought I was watching a video of my little niece chattering around. It couldn't come from outside. As I said, it was almost midnight, and it was fall, so the nights were getting quite cold. Also, all our windows were closed, and it sounded like the girl was standing right next to us. Lastly, my boyfriend and I were fighting over something, and I told him to leave me alone so I could calm down a little. He went outside to work in the garden, and I stayed in the bedroom, when I heard something that sounded like someone was tapping their fingers impatiently on a firm surface. It came from the doorframe right outside the bedroom. It startled me a little, and I stared out the hallway. Nothing. Then I heard it again. I got nervous, and I grabbed my phone to call my boyfriend. He came back inside to look, but there was nothing. Of course. 3. Just to preface this story, I never had any experiences like this before or since. I would like to find some rational explanation for it all, but to this point, I've not been able to. Even thinking about this house brings back the same helpless fear I experienced back then. I was about 16 years old when my family purchased a fixer-upper home in a relatively nice neighborhood. By no means was it a dump, but it certainly needed work. Upon moving in, we were informed the house had in the past served as a home healthcare facility for the elderly. There were no strange feelings about it. Our family was quite excited to have a new home to start fresh. My father and I began ripping up all the flooring and laying new tile throughout, knocking out some walls, redoing the kitchen counters, etc. Next was the backyard. It was basically just a dirt lot with a little porch. On the porch was the laundry room. Tiny little shed near the back door. The first strange thing we noticed was there were multiple locks on it. The odd part was the locks were on the inside of the laundry room. The door was rather heavy. I don't believe it was wood, but it was dense material. On the inside of that door was a tiny child-sized handprint. Not in paint or dust, but it was impressed into the door. This baffled us for the longest time. My brother and I began tearing up the yard and getting ready to seed it, and my brother hit something hard that made a ding sound. We kept digging around it until we decided to pause. We didn't want a massive hole in the yard. My father's curiosity got the best of him, and he decided he would dig until we unearthed whatever it was. We dug a massive hole and discovered an entire twin bed frame, black and rusty. In addition, we found several small plastic children's toys, many of which appeared to be partially melted. This officially gave us all the creeps. Over the next few months, strange things started to happen. Our 2 dogs would stand and stare down the hallway, growling and barking, with their hair on end. Every time this would happen, we would all pause and watch. This became more frequent, until they began going into my room at the end of the hall and repeating this, staring into my closet. This was obviously unnerving, but ultimately decided there was nothing to worry about. They were just being good boys. Sometime later, I remember waking up in the middle of the night and feeling an extremely dark, oppressive feeling like I was being watched. I sat up and looked around the room, and there was nothing but the fear and energy was paralyzing. I'm roughly 17 at this time, and I began sleeping with my head under the covers. Every now and then I would wake up in the middle of the night, and that feeling of being watched. That fear was so heavy I wouldn't even look above my comforter, feeling I would see something large and ominous staring back. I told my father about this, and although he believed me, there was nothing to be done about it. A few months later, that all came to a head when I awoke to someone shouting my name in the deepest, raspiest voice. I jumped out of my bed and flew to my door at light speed. I threw it open to find my entire family staring back from their respective bedroom doors. "Who the hell screamed my name?" I said. Everyone just stared at each other, visibly shaken, and stated they all heard their names screeched as well. Things intensified from there. Things moving or being knocked off of shelves. In the movies, it's always something small, only noticed by someone alone. But in our case, it was always on full display for whoever was there. My brother's football team was over one day in the living room, eating and playing Xbox, while my dad cooked when several items on the top of our entertainment center went flying several feet. This was not a case of the items rolling off or an uneven surface. There were signed baseballs and footballs flying off and hitting the wall. These football players took off running through the front door. By this point, my family had grown used to the strange happenings, and after standing there, taking it all in, we picked up the items and went about our day. The next significant event was when my dad's friends were over sitting on the couch. These were not tiny people, rather heavy-set. All three on the couch when, mid-conversation, the couch moved several inches to the left, screeching across the floor quickly. This startled me and I jumped. I have never seen anyone move as fast as those three people on the couch. You would have thought we had ejector seats on that couch. A short time later, I was coming home from work in the early evening. I pulled into the carport when I saw the door was wide open. I knew immediately something was off. I apprehensively peeked in and saw the back door was also open. I walked in and immediately felt a feeling of dread as I looked around and saw every door, cabinet, and drawer in the kitchen wide open. Thinking myself a tough guy, I grabbed a knife and decided to search the home while yelling out for my family, or whatever potential intruder may be there. When I got to that dark hallway and stared down it, I knew something wasn't right. The fear overshadowed whatever courage I thought I had, and I ran out and called my father. They were out walking the dogs. They ran home and saw everything opened. We searched the home. No one was there. Things got very dark in our home. Everyone was always angry and fighting. Families have issues, but this was constant, almost unexplainably so when looking back on it. I started having these moments where it was like daydreaming, but deeper and more vivid. I couldn't hear people around me. It was like being somewhere else. Finally, one day, a girlfriend of mine was over. I was sitting there on the edge of my bed, staring into my closet where I had my entertainment center, when I dozed off into one of these daydreams. I saw my girlfriend take my phone and walk into my dining room where my family was sitting, and sat it behind my dad's records to prank me. When I snapped to, I stood up casually, walked into the dining room and removed the records and grabbed the phone. My girlfriend and the entire family stood there with their jaws on the floor. "How did you know where that was?" they asked. I started saying, "Well, I saw her put it there." As I said this, I started to realize how bizarre that sounded, and started to feel freaked out now, seeing them stare at me like a crazy person. I just walked out the door, started my car, and went on a date. That came up several times, and to this day, I don't like talking about it. It was too strange. There were many more events. These were just the highlights. I was glad when they sold that house. Whatever the explanation for all of these things, they were creepy as hell. 4. This happened to me about 3 or 4 years ago when I was living in Leeds. But the memory is still so vivid in my mind, I can tell this story like it happened yesterday. I'd been living in a flat with 2 of my other friends for about 4 or 5 months at this time. Nothing strange or anything out of the ordinary had happened at all. I was used to the sounds that they would make from their room, if any, so I would have known if this was them. I'd been trying to fall asleep for around 30 minutes when I hear this tapping sound coming from my radiator, which was pretty close to my bed. I thought it was weird, but it hadn't been working since I'd moved in, so I knew it wasn't turned on or anything. It would happen in intervals, and then the tapping sounded like it was crawling up the wall, so the first couple of times it sounded like it was coming directly from the side of me, and slowly the tapping got higher and louder each time. I kept telling myself, okay, next time this happens I'm going to get up and turn on the light and see what's happening, but I kept being too scared to move. The tapping stopped eventually, but then a few moments later I had this really creepy, low, whispering voice in my ear. If I were to say it sounded more like a female voice, but it was so low and disgruntled I really had no idea. The first time it happened, I just thought to myself, fuck, I need to fall asleep, thinking I was just really tired and it was from a lack of sleep or something. Then it happened again, the exact same voice. I have no idea what it was saying, but it was clearly trying to say something to me. The first two were pretty quiet, but then when the third one was a little bit louder, I said, oh, fuck it, I'm going to talk to my flatmate. I went into his room and asked him, hey man, are you hearing anything weird? I keep hearing this weird tapping in my room, and it sounds like someone's whispering in my ear. He said no, but then I asked him if he could come into my room for a few minutes to see if anything happened. And we went into my room and turned on the lights and sat there for a bit. Nothing happened. So I went back to his room with him and was like, fuck it. If anything else happens, I'll tell you. Now his room was right next to mine, and as soon as I closed his door and opened mine, right when I closed my door, the voice was literally right in my ear, and it was the loudest it had been. And this time it sounded very angry. And it happened when the lights were on. I screamed after being scared shitless and ran back into my friend's room and told him what had happened, and we immediately decided to leave and stay the night at my friend's house. Nothing else happened for the rest of the time I stayed there, but it definitely made me scared for the rest of the time being there. Since then, I haven't had anything like this happen to me. Each time I tell this story, it gives me chills. Easily one of the most terrifying experiences I had ever had. 5. So this just happened today. I'm a bit skeptical in the paranormal, but I never dismiss whenever I have an experience that I cannot explain. I've had a few experiences in this house, but today, 2 very weird things happened. The first thing that happened was that I heard my brother call my name. I was sat in my bed and I heard him shout my name just once. It sounded faint, as if it wasn't in the same room that I was in, but I couldn't pinpoint which room it came from. It didn't really sound like it came from a specific room at all, but I knew that it definitely came from outside my room. He sounded panicked and distant, and from what I heard, I somehow sensed that he wasn't the one saying it. I got up to check, anyways, to see if he was all right, but he wasn't even home. I found that weird, but shrugged it off as my mind possibly playing tricks on me. Anyway, hours had passed and it was now 4 a.m. I had kept getting up throughout the night to go downstairs to the kitchen, and every time I went downstairs, I felt like I was being watched. It didn't feel necessarily bad, but it felt slightly off-putting. I went downstairs for a final time to get some water, and again, I felt as if I was being watched. I glanced around but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I grabbed my water and left the kitchen, switching off all the lights downstairs, but keeping the landing light on as I started to walk up the stairs. My staircase is laid out in the way, so that you can see the dining room to the left as you walk up the stairs. Within the dining room, we have a tall white cabinet that is pressed up against the wall, facing the opposite to the kitchen where I had just come from. Whenever I walk up the stairs at night, I always glance at the dining room out of habit, just like any other night. I glanced into the dining room, and something caught my attention immediately. Within my peripheral vision, I saw something black sitting in front of the tall, white cabinet. At first, I thought it was just a black bag slumped up against it, but as I turned my head, I saw the anatomy of what looked like a person. It was a woman who looked just like me, sitting against the cabinet door. She sat with her knees pressed up against her chest, staring straight ahead into the kitchen's direction. Her clothes matched a black hoodie that I own, and her side profile looked just like mine. There was no emotion on her face, but I got a sense of sadness when I looked at her. She just sat there, staring blankly in the dark. I only saw this for a few brief seconds, as, by a force of habit, I turned my head away from the dining room's direction. But when my eyes realized what I had just saw, I turned back immediately. However, by the time I had turned back, she was gone. Even though she still looked like me, I could tell that she wasn't authentic. like she was someone else mimicking my appearance. It feels like I'm being messed with, from hearing my brother call my name, to seeing myself sitting in a darkened room. I want to know if anyone else has experienced something similar, or your thoughts on what this could mean. I live in a small village in Britain. My house was made in the 1800s. A lot of people who have stayed in this house have complained about weird happenings. This isn't the first time I've experienced something peculiar here, but it's the first time I've ever seen a full-body apparition out of the 6 years of living here. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 252. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like and subscribe, and find me the number of a good shrink. Joking about finding me a good shrink part, I'm sure I could do that myself if I needed to. It's been a stressful day. I was going to do a recording stream today, then I ended up spending 4 hours having a crisis about washing. I ended up having 3 fucking showers as well. This is probably TMI, but what the hell, I may as well tell you. See, basically what had happened is I'd done my washing, put the stuff in the dryer, and that was fine. Then I got out, well then, like the following day, the stuff was in the dryer, it had been dried. Had a shower. I was about to then go and, you know, just before I started work, I had a shower, about to go start work, and then I was drying off. I thought, that towel doesn't smell. It smells like a damp towel. It shouldn't be. It's clean. So I thought, well, I've just dried myself with that. Ew. So had another shower. Then I grabbed another towel, and sure, same with that one again. But everything else that was in the dryer with it smelled fine. These are old towels, so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to chuck them and order new towels, which I've done. So I ended up having a third shower because I just didn't feel clean after that. Then I was fine after that, but I'm going to have to, like I say, those towels are going to have to get chucked, which is disappointing. I mean, they are old, but they were okay. There's been occasions where I've had to give them a couple of washes if maybe they've been sitting for a bit, but the usual, well, some days do not go your way. This was one of those days. And I've been a bit of a grumpy dick as such because of it, so if I was a grumpy dick to you, I certainly do apologize. Alright, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.